To get the stitching on this holster extra secure, I'm going to use a little bit of fishing line. And I'm going to use a technique I haven't really used before. I'm just going to add a few stitches of this fishing line in a few places along the holster. But to do that, I'm going to use this sewing machine needle. And with a sewing machine needle, the eye is at the end of the needle, and I'm going to thread the fishing line through that eye, and then push the needle through the holster to the other side. Gotta be careful not to stick myself. Okay. Now that I got that needle pushed through to the other side, I want to pull this tag in all the way through the holster. Now what I'm going to do here is use this sewing machine needle like an awl. If you're not familiar with a sewing awl, it works pretty much like a sewing machine. You're just doing everything by hand. So now that I've got that line pushed through, I'm going to pull this needle back out. And I'm going to slide it down the fishing line a little bit, and I'm going to pull a nice long length of that fishing line through to the other side. Now this is going to be like our top thread, and this will be our bottom thread. The trick to this is you always, after every stitch, you want to make sure that the sewing machine needle slides freely along this fishing line. If it's caught within a loop, you need to stop and correct what you're doing before you continue on. Otherwise you're going to find yourself stuck. Now I'm going to create a second loop. And I'm just going to do maybe 3 or 4 stitches in 2 or 3 spots along this holster. Now I push the needle through. Now once I pull it back out, it's should create a little loop. Once I've created that loop in the fishing line that I just pushed through, I'm going to thread this top bit of fishing line through that loop before pulling it back out. I just want to double check that needle's sliding freely, and since it is, I'm going to pull these 2 threads tight to create a tight stitch, and then continue on and make another one. You got to be real careful not to break this sewing machine needle as I'm doing this. Once again, I've got to push through, pull it back out just a little bit. Yeah, we'll try that again. Once again, we've created a loop there. We're going to feed that fishing line through again. Then pull the needle back out. Check once again, it's sliding freely. So I'll pull those tight. And I'll just continue that along. This holster ended up being a bit of an experiment for me. I tried a lot of new stuff that I haven't done before and learned quite a bit in the process. And in that process I made a lot of mistakes that some which they're easy fixes, but some of which I'm not going to be able to correct. For instance, with this snap fastener I added to this strap, I really wish I would have put the button side on the inside of this strap here and the stud on this strap, because I think that would have been a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. Now I got the button rubbing up against the pistol, but in the end it's not that big of a deal. Another thing I did was I have these snap fasteners on the inside of the pistol belt, and I think I would have much rather have these facing outside. That's a pretty simple fix. All I really have to do is cut through the stitching here and basically just reverse the strap. It's simple enough. I now know that I really need to pay attention to the tension settings on the sewing machine when I'm sewing through plastic. I've had a lot of spots where the stitching just didn't turn out right, and I ended up just having to burn the stitching into place. But other than that, I learned quite a few things. As far as the inside of this holster, you know, that thin plastic that this holster is made of, it shouldn't be that hard to find. I noticed, you know, my spiral notebook here, you know, the outside of that is pretty much the same thing that's on the inside of this holster. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye out for some of this plastic. You know, if I see some of this getting thrown away, or, you know, somebody doesn't need it anymore, I'll definitely be salvaging some of that and adding that to my sewing kit from now on. You know, with that I can pretty much make a holster or a piece of equipment pretty much any shape I want. I just have to cut that shape out of that plastic and we're good to go. So that kind of gets me excited for some future projects that I have in mind as soon as I get the materials that I need.